Welcome to Empathy Stories, where we explore heartfelt tales that touch the soul and remind us of the power of love, resilience, and forgiveness. Today, we bring you the extraordinary journey of three siblings searching for their mother after 15 years of separation, uncovering a story of pain, hope, and second chances. On a bitterly cold winter evening, the quiet streets of Springfield were blanketed in snow, their usual hum of life subdued by the biting chill. In a small, dimly lit house on the outskirts of town, Jessica stared out of the frosted window. The silence inside her home mirrored the stillness outside. Yet her mind was anything but quiet. It raced with thoughts, fears, and the unbearable weight of despair. Jessica had always envisioned a life filled with warmth and joy. Her husband, Michael, had once been her partner in that dream, a man she had trusted to face life's challenges together. But that dream had shattered when he walked out of their lives without a word. His departure left her alone with their triplets, Emily, Jacob, and Noah, three beautiful children who depended on her for everything. The days following Michael's departure blurred into one long struggle. Jessica juggled feeding her children, changing diapers, and soothing their cries late into the night. Her body grew weary, but it was her spirit that bore the heaviest burden. With no family to lean on and no close friends to share her struggles, Jessica found herself increasingly isolated. The walls of her small home seemed to close in on her with each passing day. The laughter that once filled the rooms now replaced by the hum of exhaustion. She had tried to reach out to her parents, but their responses were curt and dismissive. "You made your choices," her father had said, the phone line crackling with finality. Even the neighbors, kind as they seemed, had their own lives and struggles. Jessica felt like a shadow in her own world, her cries for help echoing into an indifferent void. Despite it all, she loved her children fiercely. She would watch them as they slept, their small faces peaceful and innocent, and her heart would ache with the knowledge that she was failing them. The cupboards were nearly bare, the heating barely worked, and every day felt like an insurmountable climb. She wanted to give them everything: the warm home, safety, a future filled with opportunities. But how could she when she couldn't even promise them enough to eat tomorrow? That fateful evening, as the temperature outside plummeted and frost crept along the edges of the windows, Jessica made a decision that would haunt her forever. It was not a decision born of anger or indifference, but one forged in the crucible of desperation. She believed that the Springfield orphanage, with its resources and support, could offer her children what she could not: a chance at survival and perhaps even happiness. She wrapped Emily, Jacob, and Noah in their warmest blankets, her hands trembling as she tucked them in tightly. They looked up at her with wide, trusting eyes, unaware of the storm raging in her heart. "Mommy loves you," she whispered, kissing each of them on the forehead. The words felt like shards of glass in her throat, cutting through her resolve. Jessica carried them through the snowy streets, her boots crunching on the frozen ground. The journey to the orphanage felt endless, each step heavier than the last. She paused several times, clutching the children close, her tears freezing on her cheeks. But she pressed on, driven by the faint hope that this sacrifice would give them a better chance. When she finally reached the large wooden doors of the Springfield orphanage, her knees buckled. She set her children down gently, hugging them one last time. They giggled, thinking it was just another game, their innocence piercing her soul. Jessica kissed them once more and whispered, "Be strong," before stepping back into the shadows. As she disappeared into the night, Jessica's heart broke into 1,000 pieces. She heard the faint creak of the door opening, the warm light of the orphanage spilling out onto the snow. Her children's voices faded into the distance as she walked away. leaving behind not just her children but a part of herself. That night, under the unforgiving winter sky, Jessica lost more than she could ever put into words. 15 years had passed since that fateful night in Springfield. And the triplets, Emily, Jacob, and Noah, had grown into young adults. The once helpless children had been shaped by a childhood filled with challenges. Yet their resilience and bond as siblings had carried them through. The Springfield orphanage, with its dedicated caretakers and modest resources, had become their sanctuary, offering them a life filled with structure and care, even if it lacked the warmth of a mother's embrace. Emily, the eldest by a few minutes, had become the protector of her siblings. Fiercely independent, she often took on responsibilities far beyond her years, ensuring that Jacob and Noah never felt alone. Jacob, with his quiet demeanor and reflective nature, often served as the emotional anchor of the trio. Meanwhile, Noah, the youngest and the dreamer, brought laughter and hope to even the darkest days. Despite their relative stability at the orphanage, questions about their past lingered. Who was their mother? Why had she left them? The triplets rarely spoke of that night, but the unanswered questions festered in their hearts, growing louder as they matured. By the time they were teenagers, the desire to understand their origins became impossible to ignore. One evening, as they rummaged through an old storage room in the orphanage, they stumbled upon a box labeled with their last name, Johnson. Inside, they found fragments of a life they had never known, small clothes they had worn as infants, a weathered photo of their mother holding them as babies, and, tucked away at the bottom, a stack of letters written in a delicate, hurried hand. Emily clutched the letters tightly, her heart pounding as she realized these were written by their mother. That night, in the dim glow of a shared bedside lamp, the three of them pored over the letters. Jessica's words painted a picture of a woman caught in a whirlwind of despair and love. She wrote about the day their father left, how the weight of caring for them alone became unbearable, and how she had come to believe that leaving them at the orphanage was her only chance to give them a better life. "I loved you more than life itself," one letter read. The ink smudged as though tears had fallen on it. "But I was drowning in my own inadequacies, and I was too weak to fight for you the way you deserved." The siblings read in silence, their emotions a mixture of anger, confusion, and sympathy. Emily's jaw tightened as she tried to process their mother's pain. Jacob's eyes filled with tears, his heart aching for the woman who had carried so much guilt. Noah, ever the optimist, focused on the love woven into her words, desperate to believe that their mother had never truly abandoned them. The letters offered them a glimpse into Jessica's mind, but they also left behind more questions. Where was she now? Did she ever think of them? Had she found peace? Or did the guilt of her decision still haunt her? Emily, always the planner, decided they needed to dig deeper. "We deserve answers," she said firmly, her voice steady even as her hands trembled. Jacob and Noah agreed. Though their reasons varied, Jacob wanted closure, while Noah hoped for reconciliation. Their search began with a visit to the local library, where they scoured old town records and newspaper archives. It was there that they discovered a crucial clue, a faded article about Jessica's disappearance shortly after leaving them at the orphanage. The report mentioned that she had been seen boarding a bus to Chicago, seemingly vanishing into the vast cityscape. With this information in hand, the triplets made a pact. They would find their mother, not to accuse her, but to understand her. They carried her letters with them as they planned their journey, each word a reminder of the love and pain that had shaped their lives. Their quest was not just about uncovering their mother's story, but also about finding themselves in the process. The triplets' journey to Chicago was marked by a mix of excitement, apprehension, and a profound sense of purpose. Armed with the letters and the faint hope of finding Jessica, they navigated the bustling city streets, tracing the faint breadcrumbs left behind in her old life. Their search led them to community centers, shelters, and libraries where she might have sought refuge years ago. Weeks turned into months, and their determination began to waver. They found traces of Jessica, a volunteer sign-in sheet here, a mention in an old shelter log there, but nothing definitive. Each clue seemed to fade into obscurity, leaving them with more questions than answers. Despite the setbacks, they grew closer as siblings, supporting one another through moments of frustration and doubt. It was at a small women's shelter on the outskirts of the city that they finally caught a break. An elderly woman who had worked there for decades remembered Jessica. She stayed here for a while, the woman recalled, her weathered hands trembling as she flipped through an old registry. She was quiet, kind, but you could tell she was carrying a heavy burden. The woman handed them a faded photograph of Jessica volunteering at the shelter, her face tired but still holding a glimmer of warmth. On the back, a note in Jessica's handwriting read, "For my children, whom I love more than anything." The sight of her familiar script brought tears to Emily's eyes. "She talked about you all the time," the woman added. "She missed you deeply but believed she wasn't strong enough to give you the life you deserved. She hoped you'd forgive her one day." This revelation stirred a whirlwind of emotions in the triplets. Emily felt anger mixed with sympathy. Jacob grappled with the weight of their mother's pain, and Noah clung to the hope that they might still find her. The woman explained that Jessica had left the shelter years ago but had spoken about moving to a quieter place to rebuild her life. She wanted to start over, the woman said. "I believe she went to a small town in Indiana, somewhere she could find peace." Armed with this new information, the siblings traveled to the town, a quaint place with tree-lined streets and a slower pace of life. It was here, in a modest bookstore, that they found her. Jessica was sitting behind the counter, her hair streaked with grey and her eyes reflecting years of sorrow and resilience. For a moment, none of them spoke. Jessica looked up and froze, her gaze locking onto theirs. Recognition flickered in her eyes, followed by disbelief. "Emily? Jacob? Noah," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Yes, Mom," Emily said, stepping forward, her voice breaking. "It's us." Jessica stood, her hands shaking, tears streaming down her face. "I never thought I'd see you again," she said, her voice heavy with emotion. "I'm so sorry for everything." The triplets moved toward her, and for the first time in 15 years, they embraced. The years of separation, pain, and unanswered questions seemed to dissolve in that moment. Jessica's tears fell freely as she clung to them, whispering apologies and words of love. They spent hours talking, piecing together the missing parts of their lives. Jessica explained her decision, her struggles, and her regret. She spoke of how she had thought of them every day, how she had carried their love in her heart even when she felt unworthy of it. Emily, ever the pragmatic one, asked the hardest question. "Why didn't you come back for us?" Jessica's eyes filled with fresh tears. "Because I thought you were better off without me. I was broken, and I didn't want to drag you down with me. But I was wrong. I should have fought harder." Jacob placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We're here now. That's what matters." Noah, the eternal optimist, smiled through his tears. "We're not looking for perfection, Mom. We just want to move forward." Over the next few days, they began to rebuild their relationship. Jessica showed them her small home, filled with books and photographs of the life she had tried to rebuild. She cooked for them, shared stories of her youth, and listened intently as they recounted their own lives. The bond that had once been severed began to mend. Fragile but real. As the triplets prepared to leave, they made a promise. "This isn't goodbye," Emily said firmly. "We'll visit. And we'll call. You're part of our lives now." Jessica nodded, her eyes filled with gratitude and hope. "Thank you," she said softly, "for giving me a second chance." The journey back to Springfield was bittersweet. They had found the answers they sought. But more importantly, they had found a way to move forward. Jessica's love, though flawed and complicated, had always been there. And now, for the first time, they could feel it fully. In the years that followed, the triplets and Jessica built a new chapter together. It wasn't perfect, but it was filled with love, understanding, and the shared determination to make up for lost time. The past could not be changed, but the future was theirs to shape, together. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey of discovery and healing. We hope this story inspired you to reflect on the power of love and forgiveness in overcoming life's challenges. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who might find solace in stories like these. Stay tuned for more moving tales on empathy stories. Until next time, take care and spread kindness.